Hi everyone, CJF Hotshot, and welcome to my labour of love, a personal retrospective, a multi-part personal retrospective, because there's no way I'm making this one video. This one video is only going to be covering one arc of many, but a multi-part personal retrospective of the first era of The Flash that I can confidently say I've lived through. Not as in like lived through, I've lived through a bunch of other eras of The Flash, but like lived through all of it and bought every single issue of it, and I'm in the process of buying the trades for it like as they come out. Like this is like my era of The Flash, the one that I claim is like probably going to be my nostalgia bank like years upon years upon years from now. And I just want to do a personal retrospective now because I'm starting to feel nostalgic about it, considering the next run of The Flash starting today upon this video's release, assuming I release it on time. So yeah, and of course I'm talking about the Jeremy Adams era of The Flash. So before we even start talking about Jeremy Adams and his issues of The Flash, I want to talk about what our headspace as a fan base was going in to the Infinite Frontier. During the first few months of 2021, well, imagine like coming off the high of speed metal and death metal, and then immediately being pivoted into a story that was designed to piss the Flash fan base off. Future State Flash. I will not talk about Future State Flash. It's not worth talking about. But what is worth talking about is the fan base kind of being scared that DC is willing to spit in the face of Wally West and his fans. So of course we were all very much hesitant to support a new Flash run until we found out that it was going to be about Wally West's like crusade upon redemption and return to the Flash mantle. And, of course, all of that redemption and return to the Flash mantle was being written by a new writer at DC called Jeremy Adams. When I say new writer, I mean he started writing for DC Comics during Future State. Not Future State Flash, that was Brandon Vietti. Jeremy Adams wrote Future State Gold Beetle, and that is going to be important. And you know why if you've read this run. If you haven't read this run, read it. The bunch I'm talking about is in Flash Volume 16, Wally West Returns. But with Jeremy Adams joining the book, being a fairly unknown talent, this could go every which way. However, there was like kind of like a glimmer of hope in the sense of, number one, it's about Wally, and you don't want to fuck over your main character unless you're the Amazing Spider-Man writers. Also, Jeremy kind of promised, like in early interviews, that as long as Wally's with me, he is going to be a very, 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 very happy man. Don't worry. And then there was also like the third thing of like every popular Flash writer has always had the Flash as like one of their first ever gigs in comics. So going into this book, there was a cautious optimism, emphasis on the optimism, just like hoping that it'd turn out really good. And that hope turned into reality. So let's talk about The Flash 768, which starts with Wally West wanting to quit being the Flash because he went through the same shit that the fan base went through and was just like, I am done. So Barry was just like, but come on. And Wally's just like, nope, I am done. And there was, of course, like some friction between Wally and Oliver because Oliver still blames Wally for killing Roy, even though Wally didn't kill Roy. And we'll get to why later. But Barry, from the looks of things, didn't tell Wally or Oliver about Eobard. He just kind of like kept it close to his chest for some reason. So we cut to Wally and Barry's like last rush, like last dash together, their last race as partners, as Flashes, as Barry attempts to take back Wally's powers away with the same method that he used on Eobard. However, a surge captured Wally and transported him through time and space and reality in general, as we'll find out later. And yes, it is very obvious that we're just calling this the Surge. And Barry Allen loses his powers, so he has to get picked up by Oliver Queen and taken to, like, the JLA Watchtower. It might not even be the Watchtower, it might be the Hall of Justice. Wherever they are, because I didn't read the captions on those pages until we went to the Flash Museum. So Wally lands in the Jurassic era in the body of a caveman that we now know through the power of 1 Minute War is called Ugg. We have a caveman called Ugg, and we have a speedster raptor named Swoosh who's about to chase Wally inside the body of Ugg. I'm just having fun. I have fun, like, retelling these stories, because, like, this is, like, some of my favorite stuff. So Wally just, like, has a great old time in the Jurassic era, because he's just, like, thinking, oh, I can't wait to tell the kids about the time I ran with dinosaurs. During all this escapade, Barry, Oliver, and Mr. Terrific has been introduced into this story. So Barry, Oliver, and Mr. Terrific have figured out a way to communicate with Wally through some residual link in the Speed Force. Now, Mr. Terrific kind of, like, trying to expand on the science of the Speed Force will, of course, be expanded upon a lot throughout this run in the background, and you'll see why. But something important here is that we suddenly see Swoosh explode with Speed Force energy. And that explosion of Speed Force energy kind of captures Wally as he is thrusted into another time. But this time, it's the 30th century, the very, very beginning of the life of Bart Allen, aka Impulse. Without any semblance of powers, and Wally looking in reflection just says, oh, I'm Bart, by the way, now Barry, apparently. There's a voice behind him with a very similar, very familiar gold and blue costume telling Impulse to run as a giant Dominator, like chases after Wally. One thing that's important to note is that Jeremy really wanted to use Blue Beetle in this story as well. Blue Beetle Ted Cord, but with Dan Jurgens having the plans for Blue and Gold, they were kind of rejected by DC, so Jeremy used Mr. Terrific, which would end up being kind of vital into the progress of the run going forward after this arc. I don't know, I just find it interesting. So let's just cut to Flash 769. Actually, before we cut to Flash 769, one thing about this arc is that there's going to be a variety of artists, with the main interlinking point is that the scenes in the present are drawn by Brandon Peterson. 768 was mainly drawn by Marco Santucci, who would later be known to draw Jeffrey Thorne's Green Lantern. And 769, the scenes with Wally in Bart's body, are being drawn by David LaFuente. Famous now, well, he was already famous for, like, Ultimate Spider-Man, but it's famous now for Radiant Red. Read Radiant Black and Radiant Red, by the way. Like, all of the Massiverse is amazing. Now, we wouldn't actually have to wait too long for the Flash 769 either, because the Flash 768 had a rare case of the relaunch of a new Flash run coming out late. And I mean late, like the last week of the month, where it was a 5-week month. Like, it came out on like March 30th. So we only had to wait like 2 or 3 weeks for the next issue, which was really good for us. But really bad waiting for 768. But, like, we got there in the end. So the Flash 769, we kind of start with the scene from the last issue, with Lily telling, by the way, Gold Beetle's name is Lily. Gold Beetle telling Wally, who's in Impulse's body, to run away from the Dominator because he doesn't have access to Bart's powers because of a power dampening collar that's being used in the 30th century. Now, they jump into Lily's ship because, of course, being a I'm going to say descendant. We actually don't know. It's either descendant or fan of Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. She has a ship, a really cool ship. And she, like, does something to where she can hear Wally and co. Like Barry, Oliver, and Michael. Like, she can hear them talk to Wally. And she's just like, so, who's Wally? And then she, like, goes on this, like, rant just saying, no, I know you, don't worry, Wally. Because it turns out that Wally would be a captain for her in the future, which we'll get to on what I'm going to call the victory lap. But we're not going to be there for a long time. And quite telling, Lily tells Wally that he doesn't retire for a long time. And so yeah, we kind of like have the seeds of Wally's not actually going to retire people. He's just feeling that way because of course he does after everything he's gone through. And Lily and Wally figure out that Bart made the Dominator Giant with that surge that came out of him. Hence why Wally's in Bart's body. And the Dominator's physiology kind of reacted to the power of the Speed Force by growing giant. Which doesn't make sense until you realize that's kind of how Jai West's powers manifest. Where he kind of like bulks up and gains a bit of muscle. So it kind of links. It kind of links in a weird way. Speaking of Jai West, God Beetle reveals that she has a bit of a relationship with a Jai West of our long time future. So that's something to like look for in the long time future for the book, I'd imagine. So they have to steal a device from the Flash Museum called an inertia pod. Hang on, what did I write in the script? Because I could have sworn it's an inertia device. I think, yeah, it's an inertia device. So Barry, Oliver, and Mr. Terrific have to plant the inertia device into a time capsule for Wally to steal in the 30th century to fix the surge. And there's like a cool scene of like them going to the Flash Museum, taking a picture with Jay's like head and Barry Allen's financial situation, which it turns out more profitable than you'd think after the museum opened in Williamson's run. So after Wally and Lily solve the problems in the 30th century by throwing the inertia device at it, Wally is like started to transport into like the next place in time and space. But Wally tells Lily to, well, we don't know this as a reader yet because this is 2021 and we won't find this out until 2023. But he tells Lily to save everyone from Heroes in Crisis. And the reason that was kept a secret from us for so long is because it was supposed to be at the end of this arc, but DC editorial said no. So we just waited until 1 Minute War. But Lily hugs Wally/Bart until Wally turns into Bart again. And in the meantime, we cut to Jay Garrick in World War II and to Flash 770. Flash 770 is drawn by Jack Herber, who's very much like a DC. I'm going to say is a DC house style artist. Like, it is very much like what I expect a DC book to be. But also kind of like, it very fits the aesthetic of like World War II and like stuff like that. And Flash 770 is also a story that was kind of like made as a pitch from Mike Cotton, the editor of the book, where he just like showed Jeremy this like one paragraph from Grant Morrison from I think it was Multiversity, but it might not be Multiversity, like of a biography of the timeline of the DC universe. And they made that an entire story. So we're going to hear where Jay Garrick and the Ray are on a mission to stop Hitler from gaining the Spear of Destiny, because this is World War II. And we have to punch Hitler in the face. This is like our mission. I know the mission is to stop him from gaining the Spear of Destiny, but I'm calling this the mission to punch Hitler in the face, because that's what we were excited for about this book. We were very shameless about this as well as a fan base. We just wanted the Flash to punch Nazis because it's like a very satisfying message and a very obvious message, you know. But yeah, and we start this story actually like not seeing Wally for a bit. Like, this is puritanical Jay Garrick in World War II. And what we see from Jay Garrick is that he's actually quite religious at this point in time. Like a young Jay Garrick very much believed in like the gods and the spirits above, which kind of makes sense when you consider that like the legend of Max Mercury, like he probably hasn't met Max at this point. And also the fact that he got the gift of speed and doesn't want to admit to people that he got his speed by smoking. Again, I'm having fun. So Jay and Ray are captured by Nazis because they dampen Jay's powers. And after 5 weeks of capture, Jay begins to pass out after Jay and Ray being tortured for literally over a month. When, as the Ray asks the Lord above for something to help, Wally West appears in Jay Garrick's body as a surge starts to appear. Now, where did the surge go? We kind of know, don't we? But the point is that Wally West is here to save the day. And Hitler now has the Spear of Destiny, and the Spear of Destiny has the surge from the Speed Force. So that's a problem. So Wally and Ray go find some World War II gear and storm the Nazi base. Because, they don't have their powers at this point. Like, they're going to get their powers back, a bit throughout the issue, but not much. Meanwhile, in the present day, Barry Allen is calling Jay Garrick to see if he records that day, and the only thing Jay Garrick remembers is probably the only thing you kind of want to remember from that point in time, and that is, I remember punching Hitler in the face. That was a very satisfying moment. I don't remember anything else. It's like that, I don't know, that was kind of cool, where it's just like, I just got the highlight of it. I don't know what to say, Barry. So after all that, after the Flash and Ray land, Jay Garrick, in true fashion, gains consciousness, takes over Wally from the body. He's just like, no. This is my moment. This is my war, Wally. I don't even know you yet, Wally, but this is my war. He takes consciousness for a second with the explicit intent and success of punching Hitler in the face. And then the Ray grabs the spear and the surge is diffused. Overall, a successful afternoon for Jay Garrick. Ray grabs a spear and the surge is defused, obviously, as Wally's consciousness starts to fade, and he tells Ray, can you get Jay to the hospital? As we find Wally landing into the next surge spot, which is in Professor Zoom's body. That's right. Now that we've finished Jay Garrick's quest, we are now on Wally West's quest to cosplay as Professor Zoom to ruin Professor Zoom's life, just like how Professor Zoom has ruined Barry's. Now, another interlude point. It was kind of at this point where we as the Flash fanbase were starting to speculate, what caused the surges? Was it Eobard? Was it Kadabra? Was it Savitar? Some people got it right, that's all I'm saying. I don't think it was me. I think I said Kadabra. But again, this is memories from me on Twitter. I definitely remember people getting it right, and I don't think it was me. But I do remember thinking that Savitar coming back would be cool, because we hadn't seen Savitar for a long time at that point. So yeah. Also another behind the scenes note, the next issue of The Flash 771, has a lot of artists attached to it. Some of the artists I can't find their page for. I recognize Howard Porter's style at a heartbeat. He is credited for a page in this issue somewhere. I don't know what page it is. Right. So I'm pretty sure that Howard Porter didn't draw in this issue and that he was just credited for inking or something. That is probably the most likely case, if you were to ask me. Because I definitely recognize Scott Collins' page, right? And for the next issue, Flash 771, Jeremy finds it very important because he kind of got to work with a childhood hero of his, Kevin Maguire, because Kevin Maguire drew JLI, and this is very much a JLI inspired issue, as you're going to see, So Flash 771 is probably kind of the highlight, what I say is that every issue of this arc kind of gets better and better and better. And I do agree with this. When Flash 770 came out, it was my favorite issue of the year. When Flash 771 came out, it was my favorite issue of the arc. And then when Flash 2021 Annual came out, it was peak fiction, right? So we are continuing the upward trend, which I think kind of shows that Jeremy was settling in to Wally's voice and was having fun, getting into the routine of writing the comics, which is amazing. So in Flash 771, we kind of start immediately in Wally West and Eobard Thawne's body. It's just Professor Zoom has killed Superman! And then Wally's just oh shit. What we've noticed is that this isn't a traditional superhero world. This is very much a kind of a glorified reference to the Super Friends cartoon from the 1960s, which means all of the villains have very flanderized personalities. You know those solid JJ videos? I think he actually released one quite recently about Wally West, actually, where he kind of like uses like stills from like from the Super Friends cartoons and replicates that style. It's very, very similar here with Kevin Maguire's art, where it's like replicating like the Super Friends like essence, which I think is really cool. And like this is just like joke after joke, where just like the Riddler's just like, riddle me this, Reverse Flash, when it's being terrible, really good. And then Wally's just like, when you work for the IRS, knowing fully well that he's been an IRS agent in the past. And yeah, I love these pages. And then like, Wally just like instigates a fight between like Lex Luthor and the rest of the Super Friends, because like he just figures out, just like, hang on, if Lex Luthor is as much as a jackass as Batman, he probably has a plan he probably has a file to take down all of the Legion of Doom, especially this version of Lex Luthor. Let's try it. Yeah, I had fun with this issue. It's really fun. It's like really funny as well, and I think that humor is like probably one of the best parts of this book, because sometimes it's very rare to find in comics in general. So just like to find a light-hearted book with like very distinct like jokes and like just things to find funny. It's just awesome. So yeah, with the villains arguing comically with Wally egging them on, Superman kind of like surges with Speed Force energy, kind of threatens Eobard because like he thinks Wally's Eobard. And then after Wally kind of like does like an Among Us, no, trust me, Wally manages to defuse the surge from Superman, and then slaps Lex Luthor in the face about 15 billion times. And then, conveniently, but also in time with the joke, because this is the rule of cool and the rule of funny, Wally's just like, alright Lex, I'm gonna give you a free shot. Punch me in the face. Wally snaps out of that body and Professor Zoom fronts and takes the punch. I love this. I love this book. I love this book. Like, yeah. So we cut to a scene where Barry is kind of like scared of Linda. So he's just like, I am not answering my phone because it's Linda calling. And then Mr. Terrific's just like, I'll take it. And then Linda just threatens Mr. Terrific on the phone. She's just like, we need to find someone smarter than you to get my husband back. And then Mr. Terrific, I don't think there is anyone smarter. Okay, miss. So, with renewed drive to save Wally West from his predicament, otherwise his wife will kill them, Barry, Oliver, and Michael soldier on. Wally travels throughout time and space into many species' bodies, as like we have the inner monologue of him like kind of describing the feelings of just like, I can't go on like this forever. I can't keep doing this. At some point I'm gonna burn out. We also like see like some pages of Wally in Ace West's body in Titans Academy. There's one by Scott Collins where he's Max Mercury and rounding up, I think, buffaloes or boars. There's one where Wally's in Jesse's body, and then Wally's just like, oh, I don't know how to explain this to you, Rick. And then there's one with Wally in Barry's body as Mopey appears. This is taking place, like this is a page that takes place in kind of a Bronze Age, Silver Age, Bronze Age story. That's kind of a cool reference. Just like this is a point where Jeremy's obviously like reading up on like as much Flash lore as possible and just like sprinkling in references here and there as we kind of culminate on like the final part of this issue. If the first half was dedicated to jokes in the Super Friends and Wally gaslighting Lex Luthor, this part, the last part, is based around sincerity. As Wally lands 20-ish years in the future, face to face with his daughter, Ira West. Of course, he's in his son's body, in Jai West's body, to find that both Jai and Ira are married, and Wally probably figured out who Jai is married to. Ira kind of like solved the search problem, and then she and Wally have a heart-to-heart because they're speedsters. And she's proud to have the Flash as her father, and that Wally retiring would kind of like mute the point. Just like, no, you have to believe you can continue on, Dad, because you taught me what heroism was. And I love you for that. I love you anyway, but I love you for that. And I'm proud. I'm proud that my father's the Flash. And it's a very sincere moment that you can only get from like writers who are parents writing about like parent-children conversations. Because like there's a level of sincerity there that you don't get anywhere else. There's a very similar scene in Superman, the One Who Fell, where it's just like Superman describing the pride he feels in John growing up. Like those are the scenes that get me, you know? Like those are the scenes that like make me tear up, because it's obviously coming from like the most genuine place ever. So Irie puts on her Kingdom Come Flash suit because Flash writers are the only writers who remember things like Hyper Time and alternate variants of Kingdom Come and shit. Like, Flash writers are the only people who remember this stuff. And, like, this is, like, a really huge plus for Jeremy because he does remember this stuff. And she just tells Wally, like, she's just like, there's a planet called Planet Flash. It's just like, don't worry. The Flash family does okay for itself. And you only have one stop left before you go home. But it's a bit of a rough run, Dad. And so, Wally phases out of Jai's body and lands at the incident, Heroes in Crisis. Which kind of brings this full circle, because, like, the first YouTube video I ever did was on another YouTube channel with my mate Elk. And it was about Heroes in Crisis, about how terrible that was. And how it feels full circle that, like, we're doing the most personal Flash retrospective for me ever. And we're landing back at kind of, like, where we began, with Heroes in Crisis and fixing it. We are fixing it. That is the promise of the 2021 annual. We are fixing what happened. So let's open this Flash 2021 annual, where we start with a scene and with Wally in his classic 90s Flash costume, which has been in like a couple of the covers. So it is kind of like spoiled that he's going back to his old suit. But like, that is not the point. Like, it's not supposed to be whether this moment's a spoiler or not. It's how we get there. So Wally is in his 90s suit, drawn by Fernando Pasarin. The 2021 annual is drawn by Fernando Pasarin and Brandon Peterson. And this, like, the Heroes in Crisis stuff is drawn by Pasarin, and the rest of it's by Peterson. So this stuff's by Pasarin, and it's Wally giving a speech about redemption being hope for tomorrow, which is something that he and Roy learned when Roy was in recovery for his, alcohol abuse or drug abuse, whichever one Wally remembers, because as Jeremy Adams has described, Wally remembers every timeline he's from. So what was Roy in recovery for? One of them. Alright, I can't joke about that too much, to be fair. So Wally cries like tear of relief when he realizes that Heroes in Crisis wasn't fully his fault, that it was the surge from the Speed Force and that it was the wrong place at the wrong time. And then he sees Roy Harper alive, and he gives Roy a big old hug, a big old bear hug. But then Wally kind of realizes that how this has to end. And Wally's just like, has to tell Roy, was just like, I killed you. I don't know why, but I killed you. It's just like, this is my past, Roy. And it's just like, And Roy's just like, calm down, Wally. We'll get through this. So, but luckily, the cause of the problem is here to absolve Wally of the incident and kind of like restore our faith in the Flash mythos. Savitar appears from the Speed Force and says, I did the surge, it was me, after Barry imprisoned me when he was the Black Flash, because he wasn't the real Black Flash, he couldn't kill me, he just imprisoned me. So after Savitar was imprisoned, he just broke out of the Speed Force, and like when he got close to breaking out, it started with a bunch of surges throughout the Speed Force, which, of course, throughout this arc, Wally's had to fix because he is the specialist boy. He has the specialist connection to the Speed Force, as Barry has described throughout the beginning of this book, like during the Barry, Oliver, and Mrs. Terrific scenes. So as Wally and Savitar fight, Roy kind of like realizes like what he has to do to stop the Speed Force like surge from like ripping a hole in space and time. Shoots an arrow at it, Well, actually, before that, he gives Wally and Oliver a speech because he figures out that there is a speech to be had. Oh, can we just flash back to Flash 770 for a moment? Because, like, that was an issue where Ray thought Jay was a crazy person because he's talking to other people. Because, like, this is the issue where with Oliver kind of knowing that Barry, Oliver, and Mrs. Terrific are in Wally's head, that he knows that Oliver's listening. Just, like, it is a very sincere speech. Like, this is what I love about these books. It's sincerity. So Roy knows that he dies here, and he tells Wally and Oliver that it's going to be okay. As Oliver shoots an arrow at the Surge, his last words are, I love you, Leanne. That hits me in the feels. So, after that, Heroes in Crisis obviously happens. We don't have to worry about that. Like, Wally's absolved now. So, Wally and Savitar finally land in present day, with an exhausted Wally, like, on the floor, and then because Wally has been through it, and Savitar just like, no, this will be mine, my moment, and blitzes all of the Justice League who are just called to, like, help Barry. Like, he basically one-shots Superman and Batman and Barry Allen. So Barry goes to Wally, and Wally's on the floor, just like, Wally, if anyone's got to stop Savitar, you know who it's got to be. It's got to be the Flash. And Barry hands the ring over to Wally, hands Wally's suit over to Wally and basically says, go get him, Flash. So the Flash stands tall against Savitar and beats the hell out of him and chucks him out of the window. Wally chases Savitar around the city and beats him with one last punch. With the Speed Force Surge inside of him, Wally is hypercharged and gets, like, a little arrogant. And, like, his faith in himself throughout this arc, throughout everyone that he's met, is finally restored after so much shit. And from Heroes in Crisis, we are kind of finally back to the point, and that is special to me. With Wally West as a Flash in his classic Flash suit, beating up Savitar, and that's kind of how the story ends. Well, not really, because, like, of course, we have to have the scene where Wally passes out, explain that the Surge is kind of permanent now until Wally kind of decides later that it isn't. We'll see why then. And Wally and Oliver reconcile as Wally goes home to his wife and kids with the last page shows Wally racing to the camera saying, "My name is Wally West and I'm the Flash." Now, what can only be described as you had to be there energy, you know? Like, this was a love letter to the Flash fan base and Jeremy Adams saying, all right, we have fixed the problem. Let's do new stories. As we have a picture of 3 people. Gold Beetle, Dr. Fate, and Heatwave. Gold Beetle won't come back for a little while. Dr. Fate we will see soon, and Heatwave we will see in the next issue of The Flash. But we are not going to talk about the next issue of The Flash yet. Yeah, this was like kind of a moment of victory for the Flash fan base because Wally West was returned to not only his classic 90s Flash costume, but also to be in the spirit of the Flash with a newly found optimism as like Jeremy drifted Wally into a direction from pessimism to optimism. And that was Wally's character arc through this issue, that now that Wally's been redeemed, he is going to do his best to seek out redemption for other people. And that is where we're going to close off. What can we expect throughout this retrospective from here on out? Because I don't think I have to explain anymore why this arc was so special to me, because it was the reignition of the Flash fanbase. What you can expect is every issue of Jeremy Adams' Flash being looked at, as well as Wally West's appearances in other books. Not necessarily every appearance, but every appearance I read. And I have to give that caveat because there might be some appearance in like Wonder Woman or something that I didn't read. But yeah, I think that's it, to be fair. Of course, like, there was also Infinite Frontier issue 0, which was kind of like comparing Barry telling Wally he's the Flash in Infinite Frontier 0 and Barry telling Wally he's the Flash in the 2021 annual. Like, Infinite Frontier felt belittling, whereas the 2021 annual felt triumphant. As if we are placing Wally where he needs to be. And that is special. That is special to me. So yeah. See you all next time when we go over some, let's just say some shorter stories after this quite big one, considering that it's essentially 7 issues long. Or, yeah. Alright, peace out everyone.